So first of all, I just want to say thank you for everybody, taking the time out to come through tonight. And as you can hear my grandson here in the background, his wonderful sounds of 19 months of joy. Um, I really appreciate folks taking time out. We do as a district. This work is important to us, and us doing it together is also important. So thank you for being here. Tonight's session will be a little bit different. As you look at the slide in front of you, there are some leaves that are highlighted. You'll see one there in the center, towards the center of the tree. Bias and values, belief systems, culture. These are the spaces that we'll dive a little bit deeper into tonight. You'll have some time together to explore some of these terms and what they mean, and rap with each other, talk, answer some questions, and we'll explore some of those things. So tonight, again, we're grateful to have our support from the BEF. I think we've got Ellen here tonight, and for across our district, a variety of people. So we're grateful to have all of you in attendance tonight. Our norms and agreements, we'll kind of touch on that. We'll have team updates. Again, tonight's objective and purpose of the time and space is really to define culture and understanding how bias impacts culture. We'll do some learning, reflecting, and dialogue on how these terms, these ideas impact diversity, equity, and inclusion. We'll do that through some breakout time. You'll reflect and talk, and then you'll share out, and there'll be some learning resources, and then you'll do feedback, and we'll close. So tonight, again, the norms, which we're going to hold pretty steady with. I think they're enough and not too much for folks to be able to kind of be themselves. Please try your best, stay engaged. So keep your faces on if you can, if you're comfortable with that. As Patrick said, if you're not speaking, please try to mute yourself. I can't promise that when I'm speaking, you won't hear this rambunctious 19-month-old cat running up and down the halls, but we'll do our best. This is a brave space, which is a little bit different than simply being a safe space. And you can make the assumption that this is also a safe space. Expect and accept discomfort and non-closure in moments of conversation. Speak your truth, address the issues and not individuals. And that's what allows the foundation of this space to be safe. Use examples like I feel, I believe, I statements. And then, when you think of things, if they're not in the midst of time to kind of ask a question, you can always post it in the chat. That's always very useful for us as we think about designing these sessions and moving forward. Please and thank you. Again, as I said, Burlington Education Foundation is our sponsor. Ellen, Chris, we appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're grateful for your participation. Christina Ciccolini, you're up.
Hi, everyone. So in regards to team updates and in regards to my department, we've been really focusing on, what does it mean to belong? And, I just purposely wrote down the definition as it would appear like in a dictionary, to be a member of a part or a particular group or organization or class. But when we're looking at it in an educational field, we're looking at how do we create a sense of belonging for all students. Again, I have a lens through special ed, but we're looking at teaching of all students and trying to make sure we're creating safe learning environments for everyone and meeting those diverse needs. So regardless of a particular group or organization class, it's meeting all the needs of all learners. So we definitely, as I speak to my team, we're looking at, if we're creating that sense of belonging, how are we contributing to that sense of belonging, meaning we as the adults? And what are we as the adults going to do differently in order to make sure that that sense of belonging is happening? And how are we meeting those diverse needs and teaching up all students within the classroom? That is where I'm heading with my department and the direction of my team chairs when we're looking at students, regardless of whether they're on plans or not. Thanks,
Thank you,
Ray.
Christina. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Uh, Carrie Lamprey, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to talk about our English Learner Parent Advisory Council. We had our second meeting on Monday night, but I want to put in the context of how we are thinking about diversity, inclusion, equity for our families. So I want to connect it to the Department of Education had recently put out an English Learner Blueprint for student success. And in that blueprint, they have four large areas of what is important for success for students who are English learners. And then under that, they have smaller areas of what that means for success. And our English Learner Parent Advisory Council falls under the larger area of school culture, and under that, effective family engagement. And it really reflects the vision that they've put out with this blueprint. And the vision is on the screen, as you can see. English learners in Massachusetts attend schools in which all educators share responsibility for their success, engage effectively with their families, and value and nurture their linguistic and cultural assets. And so I'm excited to say that when we had our meeting, several of these areas we were able to ensure were successful. So as far as share responsibility, we had collaboration among district administrators. We had a digital coach available. We had a tech specialist, our curriculum coach, community members, and we had diverse families representing more than 10 different languages at the meeting. Um, as far as engage effectively, we were able to have interpreters and translators available. We had someone there to interpret for Spanish, Portuguese, Mandarin, Chinese, Haitian Creole, Vietnamese, and Telugu, among many languages. We were also able to engage effectively by using feedback from our session one to support parents' engagement in their child's education. So parents asked for more information about the grades and what that means in our district. And so we had a presentation about Aspen and grades and the grading system, which can look very different for parents who were not necessarily born in the United States. And then third, engaging effectively, we were able to help families to have equitable access to community activities by bringing in our rec department to be able to share about the opportunities available in our community. We had a representative from soccer and basketball there as well. And families, again, were very excited to be able to have this information where many of their children had not previously been able to participate. And finally, value and nurture their linguistic and cultural assets. To address that, we definitely had meaningful, authentic engagement. Parents are in this group to be able to provide feedback to us as well as receive information. And one of the ways that we were able to do this and start this collaboration was we had Mr. Sean Musselman came as the curriculum, social studies curriculum coach. And he was able to have parents give feedback on their traditions and celebrations that are important to them. And this feedback will go into helping to shape our social studies curriculum, in particular for our kindergarten students. So when they study, some of the traditions and holidays they're celebrating are reflective of our community. And this is an ongoing piece that he will be coming back and getting more information from families to really inform our curriculum. So I am excited to share that again, this is a second time meeting, and we have several other meetings throughout the year, but it's a growing group, and again, a group where we're able to give voice to our students and families who are English learners.
So thank you.
Carrie, thank you so much. And just as, as an FYI, we will have a space where, again, if you have questions about any of the district level work that's being updated, please type into the chat your questions. We'll find spaces in this session and beyond for our leadership folks to be able to reply to you. And you can always email them as well or call them directly. That's why they're here. So I just wanted to say that. Next up, Jennifer Knight.
Sorry, Ray, I just want to mention one more thing that actually is as relevant to this meeting here, is we are also testing out a live streaming option for our families who wouldn't otherwise be able to participate in this event because they are still learning English and may not be able to understand what is happening. So now we have an opportunity to have interpreters. We're testing this out tonight, and we have some interpreters that are actually interpreting this meeting tonight. So I'm excited to say that we are hopefully increasing our inclusion here as well.
It's awesome.
Mr.
Thank you.
Porch, I'm going to
Yeah.
call an audible because I need to stop sharing my screen, and my co-host, Mr. Kuna, is having trouble sharing his screen. So I need to do something to actually enable that resource that Mr. Lamprey just talked about. So if people could bear with me for 2 minutes, if you wouldn't mind picking up the slack for me while I do this.
Yes, no worries, no worries. We appreciate the heads up.
Thank you.
So I wanted to see if I was going to ask if Miss Knight, if you felt comfortable kind of sharing the work that you're doing, and we'll get that slide up. But please go ahead.
Absolutely. I did write everything down, so I will just go ahead and read. Let me know if I'm being too fast, but I just wrote a little slide the last time we were together, which was amazing at the last DEI. Let's talk about it. I didn't have a voice, and so I wanted to just say a little bit about my current role. So my role as Director of Family and Community Engagement in Burlington is a new one to the district, and it allows me to service the needs of our community through our students. In the district's plan for success, family engagement is an important pillar. One of the goals' objectives is to strengthen the Burlington Public School culture through relationships. These relationships are built with students, families, staff, and the greater Burlington community. Strong relationships ensure the health, safety, and happiness of all the learners and adults in our community. As I work in the schools and staff, with staff and students, my goal is to continually improve communication between home and school, build relationships to engage all families, and empower families as partners. I did want to just say a few things that I've been working on since the school year started, to kind of give a little update. For one, just working with a couple of families to secure housing, working with a number of families to access emergency food services and set up ongoing food support. I've been able to provide clothing and school supplies for students all over the district that's been donated from local organizations and companies. And I've partnered with staff to increase daily communication with families. I also work very closely with Carrie Lamprey with the LPAC, and that's been very rewarding and amazing to allow more access for more families in the district. So right now, looking forward towards the holidays. I'm currently exploring programs that assist families around the holidays. Burlington is so generous, and I'm really grateful to be a part of it. I do want to ask the families that are here, if you do have information for me about current organizations that support families during the holidays, if you could put it in the chat or send me an email, I'd love to reach out with them and partner with them to support more students that are in need, especially this time of year. So my email, I'll put it in the chat, and can always be reached jknight@bpsk12.org. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you so much, Miss Knight. We appreciate you. And as I continue to work on the technology here, I'll just kind of share a little bit more about where we're going next in the work for this evening. One of the big things for us as a school district, as you heard from some of our leadership folks, is that we're really trying to be conscientious about transparency. And in that vein, we want to know from you kind of areas where we can be better. We want to know from you where we could provide additional information or supports or kind of direct our attention as a school district for our families, for our children in the school district. Um, and that's a process that'll unfold over time. I know that this is a little bit different than historically what this district has done, and I think people have really, you know, chimed in as much as they can at this point. We're working on our website. I know that that's an area of concern where we want to be a little bit better and clean that up. We've got a wonderful person working on that. Um, and we'll hopefully get that up to speed, you know, in a better way than it is at present. But just know that we're working on that. Patrick, if you could, yes. So for tonight's session, one of the things that we've been talking a lot about and really with school leaders, with teachers, with, you know, all of the folks inside internal to Burlington School District is how we create a strong sense of belonging by engaging, learning, seeking understanding, reflecting on our own beliefs and values. And some of that is what we're going to explore tonight in a lot more in-depth kind of way. And so I ask that folks do that with best intention. I ask that folk do that with, you know, with respect to your you know, fellow participants, and be thoughtful about, you know, kind of modeling as you share. As I said, the norms are critical, but be yourself and speak into the space the way you feel is needed for you to express what you believe and what you value. I don't think that we can get to a better place as a community and as a society without that being a part of the process. So Patrick. So we're going to jump right in with this slide that I love is what's culture got to do with it. The objective and purpose of this time is to define
Oop,
culture.
sorry, my bad.
That's okay. Caught back here. Is to define culture, and so what we want to ask you to do right now for the next 3 minutes is really just take a minute on your phone or on a piece of paper or a napkin. Take 3 minutes and jot down how you define culture. All right.
Whether it's advice on managing your anxiety or tools to help you stay grounded, Coping-19 provides a range of resources and self-care tips to help you cope with this pandemic. We can help. Find the resources that work best for you at coping-19.org.
And as you start to like wrap up your reflection, just keep that what you highlighted top of mind as you'll be drawing upon that here shortly. Patrick.
Sorry, that my 3 minutes was jumping on my computer, so I apologize if that.
It's
I
okay.
don't know how it was for everybody else. So to frame tonight's conversation about bias and the implications of culture, we're going to share a video and a excerpt from a podcast. But I think it's important. I want to talk about, you know, a little implicit bias of mine that came out recently, which I wasn't even aware that was still there. I had a colleague that was going to a doctor's appointment, and I said, "Oh, what's his name?" And she looked at me and said, "It's a she." And I was like, "Man, what am I like?" Again, it's just something I think that's been so ingrained in me. 54-year-old man, been to a lot of male doctors myself, and my sister-in-law, whose house I'm going to for Thanksgiving, is going to be upset if I share that story because her name is Dr. Larkin. So anyway, that's just a little bit of background. And if we're not like, I'm open to sharing that with you because you stumble across these things from time to time if you're looking for them. So I appreciate my colleague saying that to me and looking at me kind of funny. But if we're not aware of them and we're not open-minded, it can have some implications on culture. So I'm gonna share the first video to start.
What a just society. Big man who loves to watch I remember moving to Oregon, the moving truck, everything. And fortunately, I had some parents that were very helpful. You know, new principals coming in, and the parents, some of them showed up to the house and they helped me unload. And I remember having this conversation with one of the parents who got so mad at me because I'm in Oregon. And one of the things I didn't know that I learned quickly was that the value of Christmas trees. So we had a artificial Christmas tree, and so I have the parent is unloading the stuff off the truck, and he sees this artificial Christmas tree, and he says, "This is Oregon. What are you doing? How dare you have this artificial tree in freaking Oregon? This is the Christmas tree capital of the world." Quick lesson that I learned. And so one of the things I learned from being out there was just I couldn't tell you how many conversations that I had regarding agriculture, regarding forestry, and just being part of nature. That was kind of like my introduction because this was my first time moving to the Pacific Northwest, and I didn't know a lot about the conversations. And initially, I'll be honest, initially it wasn't of interest, but again, it just those conversations would come up so much that you know what I did? Not having a green thumb in this world, I sat there and took the time to do some research on forestry, learn a little bit about agriculture and gardening and all these things. Because again, these were topics that were coming up. And again, isn't it helpful as a principal, as a school leader, as a face part of the, you know, as being part of the school culture to be able to interact with your families, with your parents about common topics that are relevant to your community. One of the things I always say when we think about being culturally responsive, and again, cultural responsiveness is not limited to just race. I was in Oregon, predominantly white area. My school was predominantly white. And when we think about culturally responsive teaching, what does that look like? That means, you know what? There's a lot of culture. There's a lot of things within the community that I am serving that I should learn about. I'm in this community. I am serving this community. The community is not here to serve me.
So we're going to give you a short period of time, probably for this one, because we're going to go back to breakout rooms for a little bit of a longer time in a few minutes. We're going to give you about 7 minutes to talk about you'll have a group of about 3 people, and what you agreed, what you disagreed with, what you wonder about in regards to what you've seen and heard so far about bias in culture. And please take a moment to introduce yourself when you first get into the rooms.
Since the moment you were born, I've made 1,000 wishes. Wishes for your future in a world that's changing fast. Do play and laugh. Do win and lose. Do it all with confidence, kindness, and strength. And always do your best to remember that no matter what you do in this life, what matters to me is that you keep doing.
If you're a parent, you've done it all this past year. But the one thing you may not have done is take care of yourself. At Boys Town, we know that a parent's mental health is important too. Visit boystown.org/stressedout for great self-care tips for parents. You can even download an ebook to guide you and your family through self-care strategies. Because healthy parents are key to happy families.
Mid-sentence there, Larkin, when you pulled us out.
That's not surprising.
Touche, my friend, touche. So I'd be curious to hear if folks wanted to share out anything that resonated from their brief time together. And we know it was quick, but if you are interested in sharing out, please just unmute yourself and chime in.
Well, I'll speak. We had an interesting expression of how the issue of being culturally responsive, that clip that was talked about by the principal, where he was trying to fit into that community. And on some level, he was trying to assimilate. And someone else spoke about how that meant assimilating into the mainstream norms, the dominant culture. And that is what often our students need to do. And then we looked at the other side of it, which is that he was the principal. And we as teachers and as a school district, I feel need to mostly take the other position, which is to be culturally responsive as much as we can to the students in our community, in our classroom, whatever. That we have different roles and different responsibilities about whether we're trying to assimilate or whether we're trying to be culturally responsive to members of our group that don't necessarily fit in, because otherwise people can feel excluded or be excluded.
Thank you so much, Ms. Simon, for sharing that. Anybody else want to share?
Could I share something? Hello?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm Adrian, and I'm a parent. And I think there's a lot of challenges today that maybe I didn't have growing up, even with diversity and accepting each other. And I see that a lot with my younger student. He's 13, than with my older student who's in high school. And sometimes I wish, I know that everyone knows about what has happened in the last few days and all that. And I guess, how can we have conversations at home and in school? I mean, I talk to my kids all the time about accepting everybody and, and empathy and all that. But I mean, how can we do a better job even of discussing some of the things that are supposedly jokes or that shouldn't, I mean, racism, these things that a lot of us thought, well, our kids don't have to deal with that. And instead, we're seeing almost an uptick in that I never experienced even. So how can a group like this and just kind of reaching out to parents and kids and coming together as a community, how can that happen in the today and what they're dealing with?
I appreciate your sharing. I think it's a terrific question. And I'm gonna deviate a little bit here, Patrick. I wonder if anybody has a response. I'm happy to give what my take is on the question and what I understood it to be, but I'm wondering if anybody has a response to that framing.
Can I pop in here?
Absolutely.
Hi everyone. I'm Dr. Natasha Hafkeni. I'm a principal for the Boston Public School System. I think it's an interesting question. I taught in Lexington for 4 years prior to teaching in Boston and then becoming an administrator here. But to answer what I think is helpful with our children today is really becoming aware and using that awareness of how we act and the words that we use and our behaviors, all of that, being aware of those things and sharing them with our students as to how that some things may be hurtful, some things that we find funny are not funny to other people. And sharing our cultures with one another. And the more that we share, the more that we know about one another, I think it it takes the humor out of it because now you know that that's someone's culture, that's the way of life of someone else. Um, so I would say our first step in taking action would be really demonstrating our awareness and sharing that with every bit of knowledge that we have about awareness and other people's cultures, sharing that amongst as many children as we can.
So
Thank you so much, Dr. Hafkeni. Do we have, we got, I think we got a little space for one more if someone else would love to share what their thoughts are.
I did put my hand up. This is Diana Marcus.
Go ahead, Diana.
I just wanted to respond to something that sort of sparked from the last speaker, and that that we're just because we're becoming more aware of issues around race, doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't been there full force in the past. I would love to recommend this book, Black Appetite, White Food by Jamila Lyscott. She's a professor at, I believe she's at UMass. I think it's UMass Amherst. But she responded to someone who was talking about a parent who didn't understand the idea of white privilege. And this was her response. And I just think it highlights the fact that things have been going on, but just because we weren't aware of them doesn't mean they weren't happening. And she says, what a privilege it must be to not know that white privilege is a problem after hundreds and hundreds of years of people of color protesting racism with their bodies, voices, pens, ballots, across digital landscapes and more. If centuries of cries against white privilege have truly fallen on deaf white ears, then we are in far more trouble than I ever imagined. And I mean, she obviously created a great deal of discomfort for the people that she was talking to at the time. But the fact is that part of the problem is that we haven't always recognized or realized that there is a problem. And so, unfortunately, the incident that happened this past week at Marshall Simons it's not an uptick in anything. It's been there. It's just whether or not we've been aware of it. Issues of race and privilege and racism, there's not an uptick. It's just a greater awareness of it. So it becomes incumbent upon us, even more so, to do something about it.
Thank you, Diana. And I appreciate your comments as well as everybody who spoke. Again, I think one of the big things, and I'm gonna frame a little bit of what may be useful for us as a community, as a school district and a community. One, I think what we're all seeing nationally is a lot of silos and a lot of finger pointing, and I think that there's a delicate balance between the hard truth of what historically this country is, and I'll talk more about this as we move along. And I know for people who are um, struggling with how to message how they feel, and with people who are struggling with receiving the brunt of what is the dominant culture, white supremacy, racist thinkers and systems that are oppressive for different diaspora folks. It's easy to allow how you feel to germinate and turn into a reaction. Some of what we have to do when we speak about awareness is really be clear about how we show up, because it's easy to point at what others are doing and make assumptions about what their learning or their thinking is. And I would caution us to not do that. That is not useful. I think that, as I said, we've got a lot of polarized dynamics happening in our country, and our young people see it. And so what we can do is be more aware and be more mindful. What we can do is act on what we know. What we can do is broaden our radius, as it were. It's pretty clear in this country, in education construct specifically, that we have a large number of white, leaders and white teachers, and we have a huge number of BIPOC students. And what that turns into, if in your lived experience you don't have a lot of repetition with people who look different than you, who come from different cultures than you, then you wouldn't have the bandwidth to know how to manage those interactions when they become complicated or difficult. For people of color, they often don't have a choice but to interact with the dominant culture. And so I want us to be mindful of that as well. But we're gonna go ahead and press forward. I really do appreciate the comments and the thoughts. Patrick, Robert, can we get the screens, get the sharing back up here? So here's more of a scripted kind of implicit and explicit bias. And again, I want us to be mindful, like what is happening is factual. Some of the things that we see happening are factual, yes. But our locus of control is what we can do internally and to stop Amir, to manage our actions. And so the history of media and institutionalized racism in society creates bias within us. The way we learn history and messages we see in the media, society shape how we view other people. These things are happening around us. So I would love to have somebody pick up from there on the we have implicit bias piece. Anybody pop yourself off and read that next section. That would be great.
We have implicit bias. These are underlying feelings that we have towards other people. We don't intentionally control these. They can play out as stereotypes, expectations, and feelings we don't express overtly. Implicit bias in schools usually looks like.
Bob, you want to fade us back there, buddy?
I'll speak quicker.
No, no worries. You're fine. You're fine.
Implicit bias in schools usually looks like low expectations for others and microaggressions where negative views are communicated to others in plain sight without judgment on the person expressing those negative views.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Would love to have somebody pick up from there on explicit bias.
Explicit bias. These are attitudes or beliefs that we accept consciously and know that we have. We consciously control these feelings. This is commonly called racism, but implicit bias can be an equal form of racism. I mean, keep going.
Nope, we'll have somebody else pick up on hierarchy, please.
Hierarchy biases are based on an understanding, explicit or implicit, of the superiority of certain races, genders, classes, etc. over others. A belief that some people are inherently better than others rather than the understanding that their perceived inferiority is created by society actively disadvantageous to them.
Thank you so much for everybody who stepped into the space and read. Go ahead, Bob. So in this next moment, I want you to just take a minute and read what Zaretta Hammond defines in her book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. It's a book from 2015, pretty popular. And then think about whether or not you agree or disagree, and then type in the chat. You agree or disagree? I don't need you to define why, but just agree or disagree, and type it into the chat, please.
My chat, excuse me, my chat is disabled.
Same for me.
Yeah, same here. I was
Yeah,
wondering
me
about
too.
that.
Do you have do you guys have the reactions? If you have reactions on your WebEx, then just hit your reaction thumb up or thumb down in the interim while we and thank you for being flexible. We appreciate you. So looks like lots of folks are in agreement with this statement. So again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. Bob, if you could roll forward, please. So I want to give a little context here. This diagram is something that is designed through some research that I've been doing over the last several years around this topic. And what we're doing in the present moment is we're focused on those bottom three elements of the diagram. So that the focus here is the equity in education. It's called an equity in education overview. So what we're doing in the present moment is we're thinking and having conversation about bias and implicit and explicit bias and the through line to culture. And so for our purposes as a school district, and I want to be very transparent, what we're trying to think really deeply about in the work that we're doing around DEI is we're focused in on behaviors, beliefs, values, and language. And that's going to be the shape beneath the future society shape over to the left. Right. So that's our lens for the work as I lead it. And I think, when I think about equity in education, I think these are the most prominent elements that impact how we move, forward with students in a way that we have an opportunity to reshape, our society moving forward. And right now we're in the midst of really unpacking how our biases influence culture. Right. And it's really about intention versus impact as we think about awareness. And I think some of the comments that I heard tonight spoke to that. Go ahead, Bob, you can roll forward. So what we're going to do next here is I want you to think about, for the next couple of minutes, what makes a relationship strong to you. Okay. And I want you to take some individual time here, maybe 3 minutes or so. We're about 8:09. So, and answer the guiding questions for yourself. So you can pop off camera if you want. Back one, Bob. Back one. Back one. I want you to answer for yourself. Where do your beliefs come from? Where do your values come from? Why is language important to you? I guess I should have been asking, is language important to you? But for purposes tonight, why is language important as you think about the context being relationship, right? Because when we interact in relationship, we use language. And then what drives your actions and behaviors in relationship? So go ahead and take the next 3 minutes and answer those questions for yourself.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Hey, let's check out this park. Oh, wow, that's really cool.
To find a great local park or forest near you, go to discovertheforest.org.
Okay, Bob, you could roll that slide forward. If you're still processing thought, please don't worry about it. We want to be mindful of time. So we're going to pop into some breakout rooms here next. And in those breakout rooms, what I'd like you to do in your group is again, give me one moment, please. Sorry about that, managing my 19-year-old grandson. So I'd like for you to, in your groups, share what your reflections were for each term, and then have a discussion about who were your biggest influencers in your life as you think about beliefs, values, language, and behaviors. Who were your biggest influencers? And share a little bit with your group members about why. So those are the two tasks that we have for you. Patrick, what do we got for time? We're at 8:14.
So we'll spend, I don't know, 12 minutes?
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
Here we go. We're starting the breakout rooms.
Oh, it's on. Release the meteor!
is looking at you, kid.
I dig it.
That felt pretty great.
Worried your friend's struggling but don't know how to reach out?
You could say how are you or get a fake tattoo. You could ask with an app if it works for you. You could write them a text or knit them a sweater. If you can't be together, you could write them a letter. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking. You could chat on the game, kick off your flip-flops. You could ask on your couch while you binge watch. However you do it, you gotta ask a friend. And if they don't share, you can ask again. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking.
There are a lot of ways to reach out to a friend about their mental health. Learn how you can help at seizetheawkward.org.
We're all just trying to keep things running for those who rely on us. That's why we don't have time to be sick with the flu.
We don't have time for delays.
We don't have time for spills.
Next. We don't have time for setbacks. Let's be real.
Getting the flu shot
helps you fight the flu.
Get a flu shot for yourself and those around you too.
And Larkin does it again, right in the middle of Bobby Conceition, dropping a pearl of wisdom. He yanks us back.
Yeah, but Bobby's always dropping a pearl of wisdom.
Keeps you coming back for more.
I love this guy. I haven't seen him in a little while. Bobby, type it in the chat. It's 8:27, and I really do want to honor your time. And I think we all can kind of recognize and see, but I would love to have 2 or 3 people share out big takeaways that they heard. You don't need to name people, but like anything that resonated for you, please share.
Thing we talked about is how when we're young, our family really shapes our beliefs. And then as we get older, our circles sort of grow, especially we talked about going to college. And then our beliefs started to be impacted more by the greater community and maybe information we sought out. And I think that really resonates with what we're doing here tonight.
Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else want to share?
Not so much a share on the what you're asking us to share, but another share I'd like to do is I just want to thank everybody for just being really kind of open and candid and talking about their experiences and their beliefs and their values and where they got them from in these groups where we're just getting to know each other. We might not even know each other in terms of beyond kind of like what our positions are in the community. So I just want to give a shout out to folks for engaging the conversation and being truly like just transparent and authentic, and I appreciated that.
Thank you, Principal Purchase. We appreciate you. Anybody else? We got time for one more.
I would like to share, just in our discussion, we were talking about as simple as receiving a receipt from a store, and we had 2 very drastic stories that were different. And to be honest with you, actually 3, just because in my group there were 2 white people there, and just the difference as to why someone wants a receipt or even a bag from when they purchase something at a store, was profound to me. I really, it's as you can tell, I'm still processing and still thinking about it, but it was amazing that we were comfortable talking about privilege. But also, what does that mean in terms of when you go to a store and purchase something as simple as getting a receipt or getting a bag to walk out of that store, and why, was pretty amazing. So it was a great discussion.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Christina. And again, I wanna honor people's time. Bob, can you roll that slide forward? So this was the section, and I know that technology derailed us a little bit tonight, and that's to be expected. So I appreciate you all's grace and patience. Again, the idea of this space and this time together is multi-tiered and multifaceted. And we're all in different places. I really do appreciate Principal Purchases putting it into perspective. And I hadn't framed it that way in an intentional way because there is a distinct difference between safe space and brave space that I spoke to before. And we're all in different places. And so to that end, I am very grateful for folks showing up and participating. And this will be a process over time where we'll dip in and out of depth around issues and topics that are super important for us individually and collectively as a community. And we'll also be framing some specific and distinct challenges through these lenses as a district in this space as well. I don't expect us to always agree. I don't expect folks to all be in the same space, and neither should you. But what my great hope is that we persist and build learning together with each other and seek understanding consistently, give our efforts to that end, and that we build some relationships through this process as well. So if you were in groups with folks and you got to chat, you want to connect, you should reach to those folks and chat and connect, keep the conversation going. My hope is that we build our radius and that we do that together. And so I appreciate everybody being here tonight. Bob or Patrick, if you could quickly pop the feedback doc in the chat, and we'll email it to folks as well because we've got everybody's email recorded. Please, 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 when you get a moment, it's 3 questions. It's not a long feedback doc. We would appreciate it. I know what's going to be in there for me is technology we got to do better with, but do the feedback for us, and we look forward to you returning and seeing us at the next session as we continue to kind of learn together. And there you go. I'm going to hang out here for a few minutes if folks have questions for me or anything that they want to wrap with or share with, or something you want to ask of me personally around my role or my work in this district, my beliefs, my values, my behaviors, language. I will hang tight here and field as many as I can, for folks. So I'm gonna sit tight if you want to do that in a more personal way. But to the rest of you, please do the feedback, and thank you, many thanks. And I look forward to seeing you next time. And if you do want to chime in with something, just pop yourself off and fire away. I'm an open book.
I don't know if Jennifer Knight is still on here. I was looking for her email address in the chat. I don't know if she had a chance to post that.
Patrick, can you shoot that into the chat, please? I don't know if Jen's still here.
Oh, great.
Bob, by the way, thank you so much for managing the technology. I know it's not an easy task, and we're still figuring some things out as we go along here. We'll continue to improve, and hopefully down road we'll get a chance to get together, where we could be in some space together. That would be beautiful as well.
Thank you, everyone.
And my team of Carrie Purchase, Jennifer, not Carrie Purchase, Carrie Lamprey, she's on my team too, but Carrie Lamprey, Christina Ciccolini, and Jennifer Knight, thank you again for providing updates for our district. Appreciate you.
I'd like to thank you guys for doing this. I think it's a really great thing to be doing, to get people to be talking, parents and school administrators and teachers. And I think it'll help our kids a lot, because we'll be able to help our kids better if we're talking and understanding what our differences are. So I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you. Let's not forget your willingness to be here as well. It's super important. So we appreciate you as well.
Thank you. And will we get an email, because we were here, of the next, of when the next one is and
Yes,
everything?
you will. Yes, you will. We will be sending that out before the end of this week. You'll get that. And we'll also send the feedback doc if folks didn't get a chance to complete it here tonight in the link. But I'm hopeful people will take the few seconds to do it. It's super important for us. But yes, you will get an email.
Okay, thank you so much. Good night now.
Thank you. Dr. Conti, AP is running around with his grandmama up and down the hallway and doing all kinds of destructive things. So please let's not conjure up AP right now. He is all over the place. AP is Amir Prince. That's my grandson. So
I want to see him.
I know. Amir, come here. Dr. Conti wants to see you. He's coming. Come here, buddy. He's out of control. Could you just bring him? What is going on, pal?
I was going to ask, how did you get your kid to listen?
Dr. Conti, say hi. Wave. Give him a fist dap. Give him a dap. Dude, you're all over the place. You say hi to Bob. Say, Bob, what are you doing?
Mr. Borch, I was going to ask you about what keeps you passionate, but I have a feeling you're just showing us what keeps you passionate.
Yeah, this is my little dude. This is my little dude. He's, you know, I'm a mirror to his future, and I try to remember that in how I show up every day and what I do in this life. I got a daughter who brought me this gift, and yeah, so he's definitely a big part of why I try to show up the way that I do, for sure, no question.
Ray, I just wanted to mention that I'm really grateful to be a part of this group. I'm participating in my company's DEI group, and I'm getting a lot of nice, information, and I'm just taking away some real gems of, there's some nice feedback and some really great input that resonates with me that I then get to bring to the folks at the company that I work at, and so it's a nice sort of distribution of information there. And the fact that, I almost view this as a real, this kind of reminds me of, a 300 or 400 level course in college where it's really seminar style, where we're sitting in a circle and we're just talking. We're not, we're sharing information, and that's how we're learning. And that's what I'm doing, at my company as well. And I think it's a great experience. I know that was a formative experience for me back in the day in high school and in college, and maybe folks did not have that experience. And I think sort of emulating that experience here is really just invaluable. So I appreciate it. It's great.
Well, I listen. I appreciate you, and I'm happy that this is of some value for you, and that you feel committed enough to kind of share what you're learning with others, because I think that's how we bring people together from silos, by having the conversation and opening with, like, we don't need to always have agreement to understand each other. So I appreciate you being here. Your voice is valuable, and I hope you continue. And I appreciate your chiming in and sharing what this means to you. It means a lot to me to hear that.
Ray, may I say something?
Sure. Go ahead, Dr. C.
So, Rob, I'd also say that we're doing a lot of work with companies who are also doing this DEI work, and there's a real moral reason for doing it. 100%, absolutely. But also, I think what companies are saying is they get better results. So I don't also want to lose track that a more diverse group of people when they're looking at decision making and future directions for organizations, come out with a better answer. And the skills that we're learning here are going to be necessary for our students to learn if they're going to be successful both beyond high school and in the workforce. So again, I don't want to discount the moral reasons for doing this. Please don't take that from what I'm saying, but this is also really important work to prepare us and then prepare our students for them to be able to thrive after we're done with them. So I'm so happy that companies are taking this on, and we're really, this isn't work just for schools. This is work for everyone to do.
I'm glad you just said that because I remember seeing something about how the most transformative innovators out there, the most successful and transformative innovators out there do it by actually tapping opinions that are so different than the goal or like than the experience that they would assume would help, help somebody reach a certain goal. Basically, very divergent experiences and opinions actually feed into a much more successful and much more transformative thing as your end product.
Well, I wanted to say that thank Dr. Conti for elevating that. That's so true, and there's lots of research that supports it. And so I appreciate you both kind of elevating that piece and the value in this for all of us. So thank you both. I think the other thing, well, we've still got a few folks here that I'd like to kind of chime in on too is I think this community dynamic is important. I think this week's element that our our um, our Marshall Simon School experience with the SWAT sticker piece, and I think for me, um, the takeaway is that unfortunate, right, and harmful, no question. But the thing that's within our locus of control is kind of how we manage situations when they occur. And I think obviously our beliefs and values play a part in kind of how we respond and or react, right? And then for me, being a kind of a language person, a response is in my mind, I statement for me, a lot more thoughtful and intentional. A reaction is a lot less of those things. And while I understand visceral reactions, having lived in the world and had some disproportionate kind of dynamics happen to me, and I get that. I also think that the opportunity that we have as a community is to build our resilience in being responsive and not reactive. And so I say that to say this, like the thing that we do have control over is our ability to contact our schools. We have the ability to contact our school leaders. We have the ability to elevate, these situations when they occur in a way that's going to be, allow us to all kind of come together in a way that's not so reactive. And I think oftentimes what happens, and it's a reality in our world, is social media, is that we can be very reactive. And I think this community has the power to be really thoughtful and responsive and say, hey, I see something, I say something, let me call my teachers, let me call my school leader immediately because this was elevated, and let the school leader know this is something that happened. Um, and then for us to kind of circle the wagons on how do we deal with it, how we handle it, what's best for our community and our family. So I would just say this to everybody that's still here, that's my hope as we go forward, that we do a little bit better job of that piece of this work, because that's within our locus of control. Um, and I think that we're better together if we do that. I think we decide, how we respond as opposed to when we choose to kind of react. So if anybody has questions about what I'm saying, please feel free to pop off and ask. I like
Can
to be
someone
very
can you summarize what happened? I sort of heard about it peripherally,
sure.
but
We've still got principal purchase here. Carrie, you want to speak to it?
Sure. So on Monday evening, we received reports kind of that there was, and some screenshots of a discussion that was happening on the Burlington residents page, that there was a swastika in paint drawn on a bathroom ceiling in the middle school. No one had contacted the school prior, to people kind of like some school personnel who are residents forwarded along. And ultimately two folks who weren't connected to the school reached out to me directly to say, did this happen? What's going on? So Tuesday morning, we began our investigation. We did a physical inspection of all bathrooms and had 3 sets of eyes on it because, we kind of went through once before school started, like, don't see it, where is it? And hadn't necessarily seen the picture of the image yet, so wasn't really sure like what surface we were looking for. Was it in pencil? Was it dark? Was it in paint? Thankfully, we ended up getting the image that essentially a student had posted on social media, and then we were able to kind of start playing the tracing backwards game. So through questioning a student, we were able to ascertain the location of the symbol, which was on the backside, the unseen side of a suspended ceiling tile. So you had to go up into the suspended ceiling to be able to see it in one of the boys' rooms. So that, we're still actively investigating how it ended up there. When it ended up there, clearly, whoever put it up there, because it wasn't in plain sight, kind of, had to share it with someone. The question is, how many, the 6 degrees of separation, right? Like, was it, as we peel it back, was it, did it happen a month ago? Did it happen 2 months ago? Did it happen last week? So we are still actively investigating that. We sent in a letter to our families yesterday afternoon, kind of describing the process and, in basically saying that this goes against our core values and we need to stand up and maybe not as direct as we should. I think one of the frustrating parts, and I'll be honest with folks here, is that people know, like there are people in the community who know who this, potentially did this, right? Like this wasn't a covert act, and there is a fear and apprehension, a concern about coming forward. Which is something that I'm now in my 4th year here, and something that since my starting here in 2018 has been really a challenge in terms of trying to get people to report things or to then be able to kind of have that conversation or like be able to investigate, because there's a culture of snitches get stitches. I've heard that more here than I've heard in other communities, and it's and I understand. I think that there's oftentimes it can be challenging to stand up and doing the right thing, and yes, sometimes there is negative, kind of feedback for doing that from peers and otherwise, and there are consequences for that too. We build that into part of the process. So I think we are working hard to address this particular incident. We are also working hard to kind of support students in kind of in direct response to the incident. And then I think that the ongoing piece of this is the work that we are doing, and it's always hard because it's as we're my team is sitting here reflecting, it's like we're doing this work as a faculty. Last week we had an ideas training which started kind of unpacking some of this, and the hope is to continue to build capacity of the educators so that we can continue to support the students in those conversations. And it changes slow and hard, and this work is hard, and it's something like this happens and it's like we're not doing enough, we need to do more. We want to be thoughtful, we don't always want to be in this reactionary place, so it's a challenge on many different aspects. So at this point our plan is to probably Monday, we have an advisory structure. I did read a statement on the announcements this morning. Some feedback from some people were that it was well received. From others, as I was standing there in a mask with that, and I was reading it because I wanted to be thoughtful and intentional with what I was saying.
Some of the feedback I got was that was less authentic. I understand that, but I also wanted to be articulate and be able to capture the thoughts. And then the next step will be having smaller group discussions and advisories. So our advisory structure is about 1 adult to about 12 kids, and they meet weekly. So there is a smaller community there. So we're hoping to support some facilitated conversations before the break, so that we continue to kind of mark the moment. And it's part of this larger context of what we need to do. It is not naive, and unfortunately, and I thought a little bit of this, as Diana shared earlier, is that these kinds of things, whether it be anti-Semitic, whether it be racist, the use of N-word, homophobic, like, we're not naive that these things are happening, and when we know about them, we absolutely address them. We are, working hard to educate to the students, and I appreciated the comment earlier around talking about identity and getting to know each other, because I think those are really important steps. And kids are really savvy, especially at middle school, and they're not going to necessarily say or do something that is going to be heard by an adult. So we're also trying to create a culture of kids standing up to do the right thing, which is challenging. So that's my long and short story of what happened, and then some of the challenges, honestly, that I've been struggling with the last 48 hours as we go through this. So.
Yeah, it's I'm sure it's not easy to, as an educator, not all educators are skilled at diversity training, right? They don't have, so when you talk about advisories, um, is there an effort to sort of actually provide maybe some workshopping for educators so that they're, have better skills to present to children?
So I think that is a commitment from the district, and that the ideas training that I was speaking of is the beginning of that.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And that's really helping and providing opportunities for educators to do some of this work, some of this like unpacking around identity, understanding what bias is like. So that's the trying to give everybody a common language. And for in your points well taken, for some people who participated in that, they've been doing this work and looking inside, and it's kind of like, okay, here, this is kind of repetitive. And for depending on where others are, this is the first time some folks are engaging in those conversations, and so we are doing that. I think our educators know how to talk to kids, absolutely. I mean, they know kids. I think that it's our responsibility to continue to build capacity to have difficult conversations and doing them in thoughtful ways, in culturally responsive ways, and that's something we're working on.
Seems like a great response to me, as opposed to reaction, as Ray was alluding to, the difference between a reaction and response. Sounds good.
The other thing I would say is this: this is this experience is a continuum. As I said earlier, I think the quote that we use quite frequently in our district is urgency without competency equals harm. So oftentimes folks want to move very quickly because of the visceral, internalized reaction they may have. And again, um, this idea that like we can solve the thing is problematic, because what we're talking about is humans, and kind of how they're experiencing the world and seeing the world. And I think for our young people, they get that. I spent some time with some of our high school students yesterday, that we're trying to begin this DEI student advisory process, where we're gonna hopefully cultivate a group of young people, to be the voice of our students in the same lane in which I do this work at the district level. And in that conversation, I learned very quickly, Mr. Larkin and I spent some time, like 40 minutes or so, with these young people, and they're very conscientious, and they understand what's happening, and they see the harm that's happening. They understand how adult people in their lives, even if your young people don't talk to you, they're talking to somebody. And so back to our locus of control, I get that folks want to do something, right? That makes sense to me. But the reality is, to train folks, folks have got to be clear about who they are when they show up at the training. And we can take that as a given. It is not a checkbox or a list, right? This is process that continues. I continue to grow and evolve as an educator and as a person. And talking about my own beliefs and values is something, in my experiences, is something that I do frequently because I want people to understand who this person is across from them, and where some of my thinking may evolve from, so that they can kind of contextualize, where what communication is: speaking, listening, and responding. There's three pieces to communication. And so when you respond to a person, you're responding to what you understand and who you understand that person to be. Well, if they're not clear about who they are, then you might misdiagnose the communication, right? This happens with our young people, with our educators. It's not because the intent is of malintent. It's because some of our white educators haven't had enough reps with BIPOC students to have their arc of learning be better, right? So that's a reality. That's not perception bias. It's a fact, right? 92% of our educators in public schools are white, right? And so if they're in their personal lives don't have enough reps with people who are not white, then how could they be good at it, right? When you talk about fear of saying X or saying Y or racist thinking or whatever you want to call it, there's some factual pieces about having reps. Now, when you acquire learning and understanding with enough reps, you become a lot more accountable, right? There's this continuum from explicit to implicit, right? And so that again comes through this dialogue of conversation and experiences. It's not just about incidents that occur, and that's a misnomer, right? And so for us to get to that level of understanding, we got to do this hard work of talking to each other, even when we don't know each other well. Stepping in from safe space to brave space. That's a choice. And so anyway, I don't want to stammer on, but like I think these pieces are what we're doing at the district level, what Principal Purchase is speaking to. That work is what we're doing in real time together now. And it'll be work that we continue to do together, so that our school leaders can do a better job for themselves and for their educators that they're responsible for in the schoolhouses that they lead.
Yeah, actually, when you mentioned reps before, that resonated big time with me, actually. And Jennifer Priest, I see you're still on the line over here. We touched on it a little bit in our little breakout room. Yeah, I think that's supremely important for sure. And actually, that's something I've sort of grappled with in living in suburbia now in the Boston area, because I come from a very diverse neighborhood in Queens, New York, where I naturally just inherently was exposed to all these different people and backgrounds. And knowing that my wife and I were going to raise children here, it was a concern to us being in a more homogenous community that our children would not be exposed to different peoples, like we were down in New York and New Jersey. Um, so yeah, how do you increase those reps? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, and that's important. So what I would say to you, what I would submit to you is this: some of this is about choice as well, right? So real simplistically, um, I have a lot of people that are friends, folks that were involved when I got married, when my daughter was born, that are intimately entangled in my life, that don't look like me, that aren't people of color. That's a choice. Um, Expanding your radius is about understanding the value in different, and no process can bring you to that level of will or want. Um, that's you work, and you have to go through those experiences and experience the value of those relationship opportunities that impacts your life in a positive and improving kind of way. It's hard to do that when you are fearful, and your fear emanates from biases that have been ingrained in you from mass media, from the way that you came up, you're rearing and not like the adults were like, oh, I want you to have a bad experience. No. They didn't know. And they didn't get exposure. So they didn't see the value in it. So thereby you didn't see the value in it, right? It's a cyclical kind of effect. And so what we want to do for our young people, and they're already ahead of the curve with us on this already, in my experience, is that they understand the value of different, right? This is not a young people issue, right? The impacts and the remnants of the impacts are a byproduct of the adults that they anchor their hearts to. So if I love my mom, my dad, and these are the people that I aspire to be in this life, and their framing for other looks this way, that's gonna have an internalized impact on our children. It's not intended, but that's the result, right? And so what I'm hopeful for is that the adult folks who show up here really make a commitment to look hard at, like, what do you want for your children if you're not here, when they got to exist in the world of different and you're not here. You want them to be able to function successfully and build strong relationship with other. You got to look hard at yourself and what your influences are. And there's no shortcut to that. That's you work. That's personalized choice, and finding ways to create reps, right? So you got to go outside your comfort level and seek connection with other, and again, no one should, or there's no framework or schema to create that for you. You got to, step into the brave space and say, hey, I'm going to go try to build a relationship with somebody who's other, and figure out what we have in common and experience that authentically. In this country, people of color have not had an option. We've had to, exist in the construct the way it is, and privilege for white people allows you to not have to. And that's not judgment, that's just reality. And we've got to be able to accept that context in order to make the cognitive decision to move forward and seek understanding of other differently.
It's a good reminder.
Well, it's a 9 o'clock hour here, folks. I appreciate you all hanging in here and rapping some. Bob, thank you. If anybody else wants to talk, chop it up, ask me questions about my life, my vision, the work that I'm trying to do. Again, I'm an open book. I'm committed to learning and being a student of humanity and doing my best, and trying to learn as I go from you, with you, and support when I can, how I can. So feel free to email me, reach out, call, build in time. You got to go through the gatekeeper, Miss Rosemary, to get to me, but feel free to reach out. With that, I'm gonna say good night, and I'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.